Hi, everybody. My name is Jared Milrad. I'm the host of Rewriting Hollywood and the founder of Movie Karma. We focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, and representation, as well as social impact in Hollywood. Really excited to have another episode here of a returning guest who we've known for a couple of years now, going back to the pandemic, and I think a little bit before that. Her name is Esther Moon. Listeners might remember Esther. She's the star of a new project on Netflix, which you can watch right now. It's called Partner Track. And it's based off of Helen Wan's acclaimed novel of the same name, following Arden Cho's character in the show, Ingrid Yun, who's an idealistic young attorney on the partner track at an elite and overwhelmingly non-diverse New York City law firm. So we're going to talk about that project, as well as catch folks up on what Esther's been up to lately. So Esther, welcome back to the show.
Hi, happy to be back. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to catch up. We were just catching up before we started and talking a bit about just the pandemic and all the crazy times we've all been through. I'd love for us to just catch our audience up too, like Esther, in terms of what you've been up to. Folks may remember you had this really interesting journey from working as a mental health clinician to kind of ending up and pursuing acting and ending up in the Academy Award nominated film Minari but going from there. So what have you been up to lately, and other than this project, and what catch folks up on that?
Yeah, well, gosh, we spoke like a year or two ago.
Yeah, a couple of years maybe
Yeah.
now.
So
Yeah.
since then, so Minari was a fun ride. It was one of those projects like I didn't expect us to get on that whole like Academy Award train thing. Anyways, it was super fun. And then since then, I've worked on a couple of things. There's an indie film that I worked on last year that'll come out sometime this year. And I guess most recently is the show Partner Track on Netflix. I play Ingrid Yun, and not I do not play Ingrid. That's Arden's character.
That's hard to say.
I play Ingrid's mom, Sujung. Um, so I'm the mom of the main character, and it's been super fun. Uh, I was flying back and forth from New York, which is New York's one of my favorite cities. So, flying back and forth to shoot was so fun. And now finally it's out in the world and it's doing really well on Netflix with audiences, and so it's been fun. It's been great. I'm doing what I love. Like, what more can I ask for?
Yeah, absolutely. It's true. I mean, just to be able to have a project especially one this successful. You mentioned you play opposite Arden Cho, who's been in Teen Wolf and Chicago Med. She herself has a really fascinating journey as an actor, and play her supportive and concerned mother. How did this role come to you, Esther? Like, tell us about the audition process and what was that like?
It was just kind of your typical actor's um, work journey. An audition came in, and I had read the book before, so when the audition came in, I knew the book, and so I was like, oh, cool. I didn't really remember the mom too much from the book, but I was like, okay, sounds fun. So I auditioned, and then lucky me, I booked it. Um, it was actually a pretty fast process. A lot of times you audition for something and then you're kind of waiting, and then you hear you're on the short list, and then you're waiting some more. But this one happened really fast. I auditioned. It went pretty, from the time that I auditioned to the time of booking, it was, I mean, less than a matter of weeks. So it was fast. It was, joyful.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's nice that it wasn't, too drawn out, like you said, or
Yeah.
too like convoluted, because it is a common thing I hear from actors
Yeah.
for sure. And
Yeah.
so, like, tell us about what intrigued you about this project, because it's based off obviously a literary source material, but
Mhm.
had you heard of the source material of the novel before? Like, were you familiar with it, or what did you think of when you learned more about it?
Well, because I had read the book before, I knew of the book, I knew the story. But what really intrigued me was, in the book, it's Ingrid Yun is a Chinese American woman, and the family's Chinese. And I heard that when they cast Arden, they wanted to kind of just be more authentic to Arden's character, and so they turned the family Korean American. So I thought that was really interesting, and that got me very excited because how many Korean American families do you see on screen? And
Yeah.
so that got me really excited, and I was looking forward to what we could do with it, how we could play around with it. Arden and I had a great time on set. We ad-libbed a lot. We added a lot of like little things that are very kind of Korean mom and daughter type of things. Most did not make it in to the final cut, not surprising. But we kept enough of the Korean stuff in there that I've gotten so many messages, especially on social media through DMs, about other Korean Americans saying, "Oh my God, they felt so seen," and I even got a message saying that they were so triggered because it was so um, kind of reflective of their own experiences,
Right.
and that's honestly what drew me. I mean, if I played a Chinese mom, that's fine. I'm happy to do that. But when you play a character that is your actual, background and ethnicity, there's something like a little extra kind of flavor you can add. Um, so that was fun. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. That's really neat. Actually, I was reading, yeah, Arden obviously is Korean American, and there's that, I'm sure, some immediate just sort of cultural rapport, as you're saying. Like, so did you feel like you were kind of flushed with ideas pretty quickly, in terms of like, hey, I wanna add this or tweak this, and like, did you feel like the team was receptive on set to experimenting?
Yeah, so before I got on set, I had no idea, right? Um, but once I got on set for the first day of filming for me, I found out that the director and Arden and everyone was really open to playing around, and we knew we can play around and it may not make it in, but everyone was open to playing. And so I really appreciated that. You do several takes, right? So one is just kind of straight the way it's written, according to the script. And then, we have some takes where we're kind of like, okay, stick to the script, but play around with it and have fun. And we did. And so, I'm really thankful to the different directors that we worked with, who were so open and, encouraging. They were like, yeah, just bring it. Let's see. We may use it, we may not, but let's try it. And so I loved it. It was great.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And let's talk to start about like the themes of the show, because it definitely has a lot to say, right? About, I mean, actually, I have a law degree myself. I was thinking about a lot of my friends who, went to law school, and there's a certain kind of person who's usually very driven, very focused, on, yeah, making that partner status, working at a big law firm, working in, usually, there's sort of litigation, you do transactional law, you just sort of pick a path, and then if you want to make partner status, there's a lot of sort of boxes you have to check. Longevity, which we hear from Arden's character a lot in the series, of just that focus and that energy you need to make partner. So like, could you talk a little about some of the themes of the show that you saw, especially, seeing a Korean American woman and kind of navigate this overwhelmingly non-diverse, mostly white male, straight male world?
Yeah. I thought the show was pretty bold in the way they tackled some issues, you know. Um, I don't know how much of the series you got to watch, but kind of
Mm.
the pivotal uh, time about in the middle of the series is when there
Mhm.
was like a retreat and there was like this racist incident,
Yep.
and they talk about like white fragility and like, I mean, and it's kind of a sensitive time right now, whether regardless of what side of which school of thought you're from. And so I thought the they were very bold in tackling that. I thought they were very bold, and I mean, yes, to have an Asian American lead, first of all, is bold because it's taking a risk, right? In mainstream media. So that was bold. I thought the way they tackled like the race issue was bold. I thought even, kind of the gay sex scenes were bold. So just in so many different ways, I thought it was bold, and I thought they handled it pretty well. And I feel like, based on what I've read online, the feedback, I think people appreciated that kind of like
Yeah.
head on confrontation. Um, because you just never know how it's going to be received, right? When you tackle race issues, like political issues.
Yeah, 1000%. Especially now, everything feels very fraught and divisive.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like, and a lot of times it's like you're screwed if you do, you're screwed if you don't. It's like, yeah. So I really appreciated that about this show, that you know how well of a job I thought they did a pretty decent job. But regardless, they tackled it, they addressed it. It was, central themes throughout the show. I appreciate that, you know.
Yeah, I do too. I think it was refreshing. I got to check out quite a bit of it, and it was refreshing. It's current. It's topical, as you're saying. It has a lot to say. Like, what stood out to you as well in terms of just the pressures that women in general even face, like in a male dominated world like law, but especially women of color who are trying to navigate sort of these multiple layers of yeah, just an industry, a field that's historically been so white, straight, male dominated. What do you think the series sort of says about that struggle specifically?
I mean, it unapologetically shined a light on it. I think it's an issue that everyone is aware of, but we don't always like talk about it, right? um or people are very like careful in how they address the issue. And so for the show to very clearly and bluntly, show that side, how regardless of how smart or intelligent, talented, productive you are, and how much money you bring in for the firm, that it's still kind of like a sometimes older, but like kind of an older white man club. I
Yeah.
think it just really it reflected what is the reality of our society right now. I think as a woman, even if you're not Asian American or a person of color, but even just as a woman, to see another woman in that kind of position, I bet every single woman thought about like, oh my God, what if like Ingrid gets married and has a baby? And,
Right.
how is that going to throw her off track? And, so in so many ways, whether they addressed it directly, which was the race issue, but even just as a woman, yes, she's on the partner track, but what about just in all the rest of the other tracks of her life, whether, and, women, they say you're either on the partner track or you're on the mommy track, right? It's like it's hard to do both. And I'm sure women watching, that also crossed their mind, I'm sure. So it brought up a lot of really relevant, very real concerns and issues for women, Asian American women, people of color, you know, and just how things still are, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, are still difficult. And like playing the mom to this lead character who is very driven, who is, very motivated, very outspoken in a lot of ways. Like how did you approach developing that character? Because it's someone who, yeah, may have more reservations or might be concerned about kind of where her daughter is heading.
yeah. The way I kind of approached Sujang, which is the name of the mom, the way I approached it was, you know, and this is a common theme in, a lot of immigrant families. You know, parents, they came to this country mostly to provide a better life for their children, right? They left their families behind, they left everything they know behind to come to this foreign country. And the goal, the American dream, is to have a child like Ingrid, Harvard Law School. Oh my God, on the partner track at an elite New York City law firm. I mean, that is like major bragging rights when we get together with our community, right?
Right.
So that's the goal, that's the dream. And when your child achieves that, you're so proud. But that comes with, the flip side of that is, alienation. You feel a bit alienated from your own child because now they are inhabiting this world that you want for them, but it's a world that's so far removed from your own. And
Right.
so it's like, there's there's so many gaps. Like there's that generation gap, there's a cultural gap. And so bridging that is harder. It's like you're so happy for your child, but then now it's like, how do I connect with my child? How does my child look at her background, her upbringing, and where do we fit in? There's some of that. And also, as a mom, you're concerned, like, okay, my child made it into that world, but is she going to survive in that world? And that comes up a little bit later on in the series, when she, spoiler alert, doesn't make partner,
Right. Right.
um, and so that's kind of how I approach the character. It's like that. It's like that. What do you call it? On one hand, you have this dream for her that she has achieved, but the flip side of that, and you just don't know how that's gonna look or how that's gonna play out.
Yeah.
Um, and I've seen that growing up in my own life and in our community, friends, family friends. And so it wasn't very hard to tap into that mindset and that concern. And so that's how I approached this story and this character.
Yeah, I love that. And it is that divergent, yeah, it's kind of divergent paradigms or divergent goals you're carrying as the character
Mhm.
for your daughter and for your family at the same time, which I'm sure a lot of, as you said, immigrant families or underrepresented communities have to balance, especially the parents. Let's talk a little bit about like the response, because you mentioned a little bit earlier, just people kind of sliding into your DMs with some feeling seen, especially who are Korean American or Asian American. Talk more, if you would, about like what the response has been and what specifically are folks saying to you beyond that. If there's things that you think people are saying that might be a sign of what could come in terms of the types of stories we could see.
Well, um, I don't know if you're aware, but when the trailer first came out, before the show aired, when the trailer first came out, there was so much, um, there was a lot of harsh comments on
Mm,
social media
yeah.
about people complaining, mostly from the Asian American community, saying, oh, another story about an Asian female with a white guy. No thanks. And they were mad. I mean, there was a lot of comments online, um, and Arden and some of the other cast, they kind of did a little story like, just wait, just wait and see. It might not be what you think. So initially there was those kind of comments, and even I, from my friends, were like, ah, is it another like just a Asian girl getting a white guy story? Not that there's anything inherently wrong with white guys, you know, um, but just that kind of
We've
sentiment.
seen a lot of those types of stories or tropes essentially before of that narrative.
Yeah, and and the thing is, it's like I don't think anyone is hating on white men per se, but it's the whole thing. It's like people are tired of like white savior stories, and so they're tired of these the ideal guy being like a white man for an Asian anyway. So there was all that, and then the show aired, and you see that it's not just that like one-sided or one-dimensional. There's like so many other layers, and yes, there are Asian men in this in this show. um and then I think a lot of people were taken aback. I mean, they were surprised by the family, not just that there was a Korean American family, but at how much of the Korean culture and even Korean language we stuck in there. And so, regarding that, the comments have been, the feedback has been great, um, by Asian Americans, other people of color, and even honestly, non Asians, my white friends,
Yeah.
um, because it's for Asians, for Asian Americans, it's so, it's so it's so nice to see a Korean American family, right? And us not being afraid to use Korean words, to talk about Korean traditions, things like that. But I think even for my non-Asian friends, it was really fun for them. They said, they asked me about that holiday dinner scene, like what is
Yeah.
that? They asked me about, little things I said, and they were like, were the subtitles correct? And it just, diversity, I feel like, is great, not just for diversity's sake, but it's also for entertainment's sake, because you're getting something different. You're not just getting the same thing over and over again. And so that's the kind of feedback I'm getting. I'm getting the, oh, I feel so seen. Oh, I feel so like validated. Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm watching my family. I'm triggered. Oh my goodness, I'm having like immigrant parent like trauma, PTSD flashbacks. I'm getting all of that. Plus the, oh, that was so interesting to see. It's so fun to see that culture on TV. I hope they see more of it. What's been really rewarding is when I get comments or messages saying, I hope they develop the family story more. We want to see more of the family. Um, that's always nice to get. So that's been the kind of feedback that I've been getting. So it's been great. It's fun. You see all those, the harsh, vitriol online initially, and then it kind of switches into, oh, it's nice to see, some diversity and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how I feel like there's so much rush to judgment that happens on social media and online because it's happened, I feel like, a few times now with trailers that have dropped and people are immediately kind of jumping to their corners and getting
Yeah.
defensive, which, like you said, I think there's reasons behind that of obviously systemic, underrepresentation, people not feeling heard, that there's like truisms behind that and truth behind it. But to sort of jump to conclusions when the project itself is not, that is a little bit harsh.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
like you said, I get it. You know, you know, whether it's this or, other things, Black Lives Matter, things that happen, I get where people are coming from and why they're so quick to be angry. And, it's like just this built up kind of sense of injustice, and, they lash out. But so I get, I feel the same way. I understand where it comes from. But yeah, hopefully people, once they watch the show,
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see it. We'll see it differently. I wanted in the last few minutes just talk about, Esther, like kind of where you see this trend going, if it is a trend, because we talked obviously when Minari came out, that was, that was a groundbreaking film in so many ways, in terms of representation and kind of authentic, storytelling from the perspective of people who actually have lived experiences that we don't often see on screen. Where do you see, do you see progress in the industry since then in terms of representation? Do you feel like we're heading in the right direction, or where do you see things?
Well, I know that from the time I started acting, which was about six years ago or so, from 6 years ago to now, I see a difference. I see a difference in the number of roles that, look for people like me, for different languages. So I definitely think there's progress. I think ever since Minari and even like Parasite, things like that, you're always kind of like, oh, are we just a trend? Is this like we're like a hot flash in the pan and is it gonna
Right.
go away? We have to jump on this while it's the train is still going. Um, but honestly, this time around, because I know, people talk about Joy Luck Club, 25 years ago, and then that happened, and then nothing happened.
Right.
And is that going to happen again, after Crazy Rich Asians and Parasite and Minari and all that? But honestly, the number of projects that I see being greenlit, the number of projects that I see being developed, and also not just in front of the camera, but behind the camera, the number of Asians and other people of color who are stepping into writing roles, producer roles. I see an increase in that too. And so I really I really have faith that it's not just a trend, that this is going to continue. And at some point, it's just going to kind of become um, normal to have all these different stories. To the
Yeah.
point where it gets normalized, that might be a while, but I definitely see change and progress, um, to the point, Jared, that I'm saying to myself, oh, I hope at some point I can, bust out of just all these Korean mom roles and
Right.
play a role that's not just Korean. I'm happy to play Korean mom, Korean auntie, for the rest of my life. But it's like, oh, there's so many like projects with, Asian American leading characters or Asian American themes. And so I get all those auditions now. And so I'm super thankful and I feel very blessed that they're coming my way. But then now it's like, oh, I'd love to play a character that's not specifically a Korean mom.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so hopefully it's here to stay and it continues. I see the momentum. It's going and it's really encouraging. It's thrilling, actually. So I hope it continues, and I hope we keep churning out good stories. Good entertainment too. Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be both, of course. People, we like to talk about, of course, inclusion and representation, but I think as Ava DuVernay and others have said, like it's kind of the thing that people notice, of course, but at least on the studio perspective and network perspective, they want to make stuff that sells and that people will watch. So it's kind of you kind of have to do both.
Yeah.
Which I guess is my next question, which is like, how do you feel like we can keep this progress, so to speak, sustainable, or systemic? Like, what do you think needs to happen to make sure the next generation and the one after that, like, have these opportunities? So we don't have to talk about underrepresentation, which for those who don't know, really underrepresentation, when we say that word, is about the reality that we still don't have, to your point, behind the camera and in front of the camera, equal representation with society. So the numbers, the percentages of folks, for example, who are LGBT plus, in often cases, like for writers or directors, are still not equaling the population percentage. of what it
Right.
should be. So like, how do we get to a place where that's as you said, normalized, but also systemic and sustainable? What do you think about that?
Ah, I was thinking about this the other day because, um, the way it becomes normalized and kind of, built into the structure of this business is you need to see a lot of it, right? And when you see a lot of it, not everything is going to be great.
Right.
Sometimes you're going to have mediocre projects.
Mhm.
Sometimes you're going to have, frankly, kind of sucky projects. But the point is to keep churning it out until we get so used to, oh, this is normal. This is, a given. And that's where my concern comes in because every time, a project or a TV show that features, traditionally underrepresented people, there's so much pressure that it has to be good.
Yep.
And, we need to prove ourselves that we're good. So we should keep making more. But no, I, I think realistically, there's going to be not so great projects either. I mean, honestly, even Partner Track, audiences are loving it and it's doing really well on Netflix, but there's a lot of critics that panned it too. And I think that's fine. You know, let's just keep making projects, whether they're good or bad. Now, the question is, if it's not good, are we going to keep getting chances?
Right.
And I don't know, um, and so I I just, there's so much pressure on the filmmakers, the actors who are non-white. There's so much pressure on Arden, to
Yeah.
do a great job and to prove that we're worthy of a TV show on Netflix. Um, so gosh, we just need to keep putting it out there, keep churning out stories, and yeah, it would be great if all the projects were, awards worthy and, really good and deep and provoking but even just like mediocre entertaining projects, I hope we can continue putting those out there, because I think that's how you get systemic change. It's not
Yeah.
just the unique occasional great projects that are put up on the pedestal, but no, here's kind of a middle of the road, you know, okay projects. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, no, I think you're so right. I mean, we need the cheesy rom-coms, that
Yeah,
have gay leads and else, queer actors and
yeah,
so forth. So on. Like we need all of that.
we need all
Um,
of that.
yeah, it needs to be all of the above, and so that,
Yeah.
like you said, there's less pressure. I guess my last question, Esther, is just around like trying to be optimistic here. What is your hope in terms of what the industry should look like longer term? What does that world look like? What kinds of stories do you feel like we're seeing? What kinds of opportunities are you getting as an actor? What kind of stories are you able to tell? um yeah, walk us through that a little bit in terms of what would be that kind of ideal storytelling space. What would that look like?
I was talking to a friend of mine about the industry and just, increased representation on screen and things like that. And I told her, I said, so I have a 9-year-old son. And when I was 9, I did not see people who looked like me on screen, right? But my son, who is 9, there's Shang-Chi, there's other shows with Asian people in it, and his mom is on screen,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool, but not so cool, But for my son, seeing Asian people on screen is not even like, whoa, there's an It's like, yeah, and yeah, well, my mom's on TV. It's like no big deal. Like seriously, for my son, it's like no big deal. And I love that. And my hope is that my son, as he gets older, continues to think that way. That what's the big deal? There's Asians on TV. Like, what's all this like representation stuff you're like shouting about? That's my hope. You know, he. I mean, think about it. If your mom is on TV, yeah, it's kind of cool, but it's also it's your mom. So if your mom can be on TV, so can a lot of other people. You
Right,
know,
right.
it's
Nothing special.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's nothing special. Like it's hard, you know. So that's what I hope for. I hope that my son and his friends, his generation, when they're older, it's no big deal. You know, representation, it's they're focused on a different area of representation, you know.
Right.
um that's my hope. That's and you know, I feel like I see that happening, um especially when you think about how well like non-American but Korean shows do on TV, like Squid Game. That was not a Asian American, Korean
Right.
American TV show. That was a Korean drama, you know,
Right.
and that did number one. That was the most watched show on Netflix globally. And so I think people are really realizing that, wow, there are some really interesting stories out there. Doesn't have to be with people that we're used to seeing, you know. And so, you know, just the fact that all these like non-American shows are doing so well on Netflix, plus the increase in projects that I see that I'm auditioning for, plus the fact that my friend and his friend, I mean, my son and his friend think it's not a big deal to see a middle aged Asian woman on TV. I take that as all positive signs. We're trending in the right direction and we just got to keep going, you know, regardless of what criticisms come our way, what they throw at us, just keep going, you know, wipe it off, brush it off, and just keep going. I think that's all we can do. And that's what's going to ultimately create lasting change.
Yeah, I love that. So dust your shoulders off, keep doing the work, and keep creating more opportunities and more stories that are full-bodied, inclusive, and representative. The project again is Partner Track. It's on Netflix right now. It's been trending. I think it was #2 Netflix top 10. It's doing really well. Folks, will check it out if you haven't already. And again, our guest today, Esther Moon. It was really a pleasure having you back on, Esther. I hope to see
Yes.
you for your next project.
Yes. So nice talking to you again, Jared.